Gentlemen, start your engines.
This is going to be a mighty emotional occasion for a lot of people, not the least of whom is myself. In a race to remember.
But this is absolutely gobsmacking. He hasn't even hit the brake yet.
It's gone crazy at the top of the hill. What an off-the-scale car race.
G'day, I'm Dan Holohan. Welcome to my motorsports podcast, On the Couch with Holden, brought to you by Sweet Black, creating success for people. On today's episode, we chat to rugby league legend Jack Elsegood. Jack has played for the Manly Seagulls, the Sydney Roosters, and even for the legendary Australian Kangaroo squad, who toured Great Britain back in 1994. After Jack retired from football, he hunted down a V8 Supercars career after winning the V8 Ute Championship back in 2009. These days, he's a successful real estate agent and is the current co-owner and founder of Delmar's Residential. That's a little bit about Jack, so how about we hear it from the man himself, Jack Elsegood. Let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, Jack Elsegood. Jack, how you been, dude?
Yeah, not bad. A little bit of an effort to get here, but I'm here.
So we were trying to talk ages and trying to figure out how to do this whole podcast. And you're actually in Queensland like the other week. What was going up in Queensland?
Oh, look, I needed a break. Obviously, since COVID, hadn't been able to get away. There was a little bit of a break with work, and plus the fact that my nephew was getting married cousin was getting married in Noosa. I just thought I'd extend it. So yeah, got a couple of weeks away. Yeah, well overdue. Had a good time.
Now, before we get into this full podcast, we actually have a close mate in common, Big Jimmy, James Golfin. How did you two actually become mates?
Mate, Big Jimmy, yes, he's one of the best, and one of my best mates, definitely. I was privileged to be his best man at his wedding. Yep. And I just got to know him through, Ian Rubin, who used to play for the Roosters. Yep. In South. So he was friends with his brother. I got an introduction through his brother, and mate, as soon as I met him, we just, hit it off. He's a mad barbecue man, and mate, I love eating barbecue. So that's where it started, and 20 years later, yeah, best of mates. Yeah, right. How'd the whole barbecue thing come on? That's a bit of a side thing away from like what we're going to talk about later in the podcast. So where did the fascination with barbecue and cooking meat come from? Look, my father was a butcher, obviously grew up eating meat, but when you give a piece of meat to Big Jimmy and you get him to put it on the barbecue with all these, special herbs and spices and all that sort of stuff, it really is something that you got to experience. It's just I've asked him and told him so many times, get out of tennis coaching, go open up a cafe, call it Big Jimmy's, and I tell you what, he would make an absolute packet. He is the best. Did you actually ever go to his because I was one of his promoters for Marquee Nightclub. Did you actually go to that nightclub thing, or did you just stay away from that? I went to it a couple of times. I think, back in the day playing football and, used to go out after, nightclubs all the time. And I think it was sometime in, would have been mid to late 90s, I think I just said to myself, righto, clubs, just pull up, because going to clubs, had its advantages. People knew you, and it was always seemed to be a pretty good place for a social, meet girls, and most of the time I was single, so that was all great. But it was also a place where plenty of drunk blokes want to have a go at you, and, at the time, the hair was blonde and the eyes were blue, and plenty of people wanted to try and take you out. Before you got into your whole racing car career, which is what the podcast is about, which was what I told you off air, obviously why I'm excited on this podcast is you're actually an ex-rugby league player. How did you get involved in rugby league? Because you were clearly involved, like you love your bikes and your cars, but back then, did you just weren't you able not to afford that type of stuff, or how did it all happen between the two sports going two different ways? Well, growing up, my father was from Victoria. He was an AFL fan, obviously. But on my mother's side, her father was a famous bumper Farrell. He was just a legend played football for Newtown, New South Wales, played for Australia. And growing up at Narrabeen Sharks, it was just one of those areas, if you lived there, you played football. And I was like every other kid, I thought playing football was the best thing in the world. Yeah. And that's what I did from probably 4 years of age. But then during, obviously growing up playing football, you watch a bit of racing here and there. Every kid's got a Matchbox car, and, it didn't matter, if you're on a push bike, a skateboard or a scooter, going fast it was just great fun. And every time you went outside your front door, there was a race somewhere. So for me, when I finished football, I always had it in mind that I wanted to go race, and that's what I did. Yeah, right. So for you, when you're watching
like TV as a kid, did you watch Bathurst and did you idolise Brocky or someone like that on TV? Did you idolise any race car drivers or more footballers?
Oh, look, I idolised a lot more footballers than racing car drivers. I probably didn't, whilst I liked watching the racing, I didn't particularly have favourite drivers, although Peter Brock was someone that everyone loved and I was no different, but I wouldn't say that I followed him like, rugby league. There were people that I didn't like, and that was obviously, I didn't like Ford, so I didn't like Dick Johnson, I didn't like Moffat. But it came to racing, I like Larry Perkins and I like Peter Brock.
Yeah. So with your, I want to know about your football career now. You did play for the Australian schoolboys, and you were obviously born in the Northern Beaches. How was it like going from high school and then playing for the schoolboys and playing with like legends now who are still involved in football while you've gone a whole different direction?
Well, I suppose the transition from school to playing first grade was pretty quick for me. The Australian schoolboys thing, I left school in, I more or less got asked to leave school halfway through year 11. And so I left and then had the rest of the year off, did some work. And then the following year, there was a schoolboy tour to the UK if you made the Australian schoolboy, made the side. So I actually went back to school just to try and make this team.
Yeah, right.
So I went back, went to Pittwater High for that year, made the Australian schoolboy side. And then thereafter, more or less I was under a contract with Manly. And then 19, I was playing first grade, which, looking back on that now, that transition from being such a young person then, because I was playing with men. There wasn't a lot of young kids back then playing football in first grade. There was a lot of older people. So that was a little bit of a strange one, because I never even drank beer really back then. And, you'd be going out with, like for Cliff, you go back for the club for a beer and, Cliffy Lyons would be having a cigarette even at half time and having a beer and having a punt, playing the pokies, and a lot of that sort of stuff was that was all foreign to me. So I kind of like stuck with my people my own age. Yeah. But still had great fun. They had a great bunch of blokes, but it was that was a little unusual.
Yeah. Did you remember playing? Was Cliff Lyons and that in the schoolboys, or were they more above you?
Oh no, they weren't in the schoolboys. They're way above, way older than me. The schoolboys obviously all my. Yeah,
who was in the Australian schoolboys squad when you defeated England?
So Josh Stewart, one of my good mates.
Yep.
We played football with Narrabeen Sharks together from when we were 4 years of age.
Yep.
Kenny Nagas.
Yep.
Kenny Nagas was in there. Danny Williams.
Yeah. Okay.
Who else? Michael Butner. There was a few. What other?
That's actually how I became a Bears fan. Michael Butner.
Really?
Yeah. So my dad was working at Pack and Sand. He owned his private little small business, right. And then he was in Crow's Nest, and that's where I live. And anyway, his mate, kind of like you, people through people, ended up knowing Michael Butner, and Dad was like, I've got a football player coming over to see you for your birthday, and it was Michael Butner.
Yeah,
and that's how I became a Bears fan. That's why I'm wearing this shirt.
Well, there you go. Yeah, so there was a few there that you'd remember that went on to first grade. So it was a good time going overseas. It was a thrill representing Australia. Yeah, good times.
What was it like being coached by Bobby Fulton in Manly?
Bob Fulton, exceptional. I was blessed to have great coaches, Phil Gould and Bob Fulton. Yeah, Bob was a very, very most powerful personality probably that I've ever come across. As a football coach, he knew his stuff. He knew it. He demanded, a huge amount of respect. But I think as a coach, he had the right combination of fear and respect that you've got to have for a coach.
Yeah.
You've got to want to play for your coach, and you've got to want to do everything that he says, You can see mutiny at clubs where there's no respect for the coach and the coach gets put out, but never the case with Bob because he was always right.
Yeah.
He was just always right and fearless and just an ultimate competitor.
Do you reckon Ivan Cleary reminds you of an old school kind of coach these days because of his culture that he's created around Penrith, or do you reckon that's a whole different dynamic because of the modern day?
Completely different type personalities. Yep. Ivan's quite an articulate fella, and Bob could hit a orange and smash it that hard and somehow gather every piece of juice, whereas Ivan Cleary's the type of bloke that would grab that orange in a certain kind of way and squeeze it the right kind of way and still end up with the same sort of result. Two completely different people, but obviously, both very, very, very successful.
When you were playing for Manly, didn't you win in your rookie season the Daily M Award? Did that come out as a surprise that year, or did you just feel like you were in the hunt for the Daily M?
Oh, God, mate, too long ago. I had too many concussions since then and now. Look, I had a great year. It was, we were in a great side. Cliffy was just throwing the ball left, right, and centre. I was scoring plenty of tries. I got the prize, which was great, and picked up a couple of others which were equally as good. The Norwich Rising Star, and the other one was Discovery of the Year. Yeah, and look, it was a great time, and it was great to win those awards. Yeah, and looking back, it was a great year for me.
You did all right. Yeah. So were you back then, because I was, as you know, I'm a huge league fan, and you sent my shirt and stuff like that. Around the Winfield Cup days, did you actually get to meet Tina Turner, or were you around that whole advertising spree? Like the marketing back then for rugby league was just insane.
It was, and God, as soon as they took away cigarettes on sponsorship, it was I think things changed. I don't think it's ever been the same since. But I missed Tina Turner, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're playing for Manly, the first 2 years, you're quite a dominant team. I think just the year after you missed out before we went to the Chalks, I think you're both minor premiers in 95 and 96. Mm-hmm. Was both the years for you, was any of them any different from one to the other, or not really?
Look, 96 was different in as much as I still played a lot of the games those years, but 96 was when they had the NRL or ARL Super League split.
Yeah.
And I suppose my focus at that point in time, I signed with ARL, and then I got an offer to go to another club, which was Super League. And then
what was the club in Super League? Because now
how it turned out was Bulldogs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right.
So basically, how that came about was the Super League, News Limited, want to contest the validity of the contract, the ARL contract, in the Industrial Relations Court. So so come over. Sign a contract with us. Yes, you got a contract there. We'll contest it on your behalf, and it worked out good, because they said, look, you can then, because I got paid from ARL and got paid from Super League, and if you lose, well, so be it. We'll still pay you your money. So I ended up going to Canterbury, played 2 trial matches, and then went before the court. We got beat. Well, it stuck, the validity, and then it was out of either going to St George or the Roosters, and went to the Roosters, and that's how I suppose I got there. So
then you played for the Roosters,
right.
So
best move I made.
And you were obviously in a movie featuring the Newtown Jets. Were you playing as your great grandfather in that?
No,
we were talking about that off air.
No, there was a movie done in the final winter, but that was after my retirement. But
I'm going way forward here because I'm trying to relate to the football content before we get to car racing content.
Yeah. No, I didn't. I just threw a few dollars at it. Just try and get it going. And look, it made it, but I think the timing of it was, like life, timing's everything. And we brought it out the week of the semis, and thinking that's when everyone would have been, pumped up to go and watch it. Yeah. But little did we realise that, Friday, Saturday, Sundays, people are watching rugby league, not going to the movies. So it didn't sell that well, but it was a great experience, and it was good to see, another movie about NRL and Newtown in particular.
Yeah, cool. How did you meet your wife? Like, how did that all come about? Because now you got a family and stuff like that.
Which wife?
No. Okay. All right.
No, I don't have a wife. I don't have kids.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're a single man. You don't have it.
That's it. Yeah. So I've had a few opportunities, but I failed on all of them, unfortunately. So here I am. Yeah. 48 and single, no kids.
Well, you were on the footy show, which I was telling you off air. You were rugby league sexiest man. Didn't you get voted for that? Did you win that competition or not?
I don't think I won it, but obviously it's all those things are, cross promotions for the game, and you go along and you do it. You get a few bucks here and there for doing it, but I don't think anyone in football ever took it seriously. So but bit of lighthearted fun. Which
how many times did you go on that show, the footy show? Did you go on it many times at all? Or
heaps of times, because I also did the Fashions in the Field with Terry Hill. Yeah, okay. With Gonads, the greyhound. So did a fair few episodes on that, and then they had the sexiest man, and then they had like a perfect match segment, and then they had, there was a few other little things where you'd go and sit on the panel and whatever it was and it was all new back then because the footy show had just started. So it was new content, it was a new show, and it was funny. It was a great show at the beginning. It's a shame that it's obviously like everything comes to an end, but There's some mega episodes on that on that program.
Did you remember many, like, who was the people that was actually running? Was it Fatty running the content, or was it any league players? Or was it
Sterling, Peter Sterling, and Mario Fennick?
Okay.
You know, so that was,
big Mario.
Yeah, and then a few others come in, but yeah. Then they had that the cricketer Richie. He was quite funny. So yeah, that was a good show. Yeah.
Before you move, obviously you've spoken a bit about the Roosters here, but you played for Manly and you're heaps involved in the beaches these days with, like, you know, being a footballer, an ex-footballer and all that. Were you ever involved with, like, Des Hasler or any of these guys these days trying to bring you back into, like, play a coaching role or anything? Have you ever been offered that after your car racing career?
I did get involved with the club there for a period as a director of the football club itself. And then after that, I got involved in the junior development with the Fultons, who have done an exceptional job at that. But at the time, you know, trying to sell houses, wanting to go and racing cars, and then training and looking after kids. And it's a bit of a loveless job too, because, you know, as much satisfaction and that you get out of it, you're also upsetting a lot of people because someone should be in front of that kid, or that kid isn't getting a fair go, or that kid, you know. So, you know, you can often be on the wrong side of a few parents. Most of them are fine with it, but it's, I just in the end, I just thought, oh no, look, I'll just walk away from this. But down the track, you know, who knows, I might get involved in a junior capacity, but certainly not. I don't have any
involved in Manly or any.
It would be Manly by
Yeah.
virtue of the area that I live in.
Yeah, okay. And so after your career, you finished, you retired in 2000 with your rugby league career. How did the whole, with the car racing thing that we spoke about before, how did you get in, like what was your first memory of being like a motorsport, involved in motorsport and car racing?
Well, how it all came, well, when I was with Manly, Bob Fulton used to love go-karting.
Yeah, okay.
And we had a player day out at Oran Park where everyone went out there to have a go of the go-karts. And I'd had dislocated my collarbone at the time. I had a dodgy arm, so I was kind of like had a hold of it just with one arm and more stiff with the other one. And I was light too, which makes a big difference in go-karts. But anyway, went out there and basically I beat everyone. And I just thought, you know, God, that was good fun. And, you know, I must be all right at it because, you know, I've beaten all these other guys and I only had one arm, so to speak. But that was where I really wanted to get involved in it.
Yeah.
And then a good friend of ours, Lindsay Dive, he lived in Mona Vale. His kids were riding to go-karting.
Yeah, Clinton. I know Clinton, yep.
Okay, well, Clint's a great mate of mine.
Yep.
And his older brother, Brendan, and his dad, obviously, Lindsay, they got involved along with my father, and they formed North Shore Go-Kart Club.
Yep.
And
that's who I race for.
Oh, well, there you go. So
yep.
That was, basically all started from my dad and Lindsay Dive.
Yeah, right.
So, and then I always said, like, you know, as soon as I finish, you know, being around that scene, as soon as I finish football, I'm straight into a car. So that's probably my first recollection of really wanting to get involved in motorsport whilst I was playing football.
Yeah, right. Did you compete at the North Shore Kart Club though, at the go-kart level, or not? Did you do any races at all just to get like a feel for it all, or you just jumped straight into a car?
Oh, you know what? I went and bought a road tax, and I went and did 2 or 3 races at Eastern Creek.
Yeah.
And then my garage got broken into. I had a couple of dirt bikes, go-kart, all stolen. And then it was at that time I was looking at getting in cars, and I just went and bought a race car instead, and I didn't bother getting back into go-karting. So it's something I might get back into and have a bit of a spin at.
What was your first like race car that you bought though? Was it the Mirage or was it a Gemini? Or
no, first race car I had was a XR8 Falcon Ute.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the V8 Ute Series.
Yeah, okay. So that was the one that you owned, but you raced obviously in 2002. I go through like.
Well, I had to do my OLT.
Yep.
And then from that, as part of then getting my license, I had to do 5 provisional races on my Ps. I did one in a HQ, or maybe a couple in a HQ. I think I did one in a Gemini. Did one in a Formula Ford.
Did you do a Formula Ford race?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And I was at an historic event. It was just to get a tick of a box. But
yeah, okay. How'd you find the Formula Ford, like an open wheel, because you mainly stuck to, you know, a tin top?
Well, I just couldn't fit in it. You know, I think it was my second or third race I've ever been in. I couldn't say that it was something that I really enjoyed. You know, it was great to just go out there and do it, but too big, too slow, and a old historic, you know.
Yeah.
Formula Ford, it just wasn't really my thing.
Do you remember where you finished in that race or not really?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. You're racing against, you know, so many different variations of cars. So it wasn't just all Formula Fords. They were all open wheelers.
So after you finished your LT, was it the first race, like your big race? That was the 24-hour Bathurst race, wasn't it? 2002.
First big race, yeah. 2000. When was that?
2002.
Yeah. So 2002. I did a full season of the Utes.
Yep.
And then at the end of that year, I would have done 24-hour.
Yeah, and that's it.
I think I've done a couple of 24-hour races. I think I've done a few 12-hour races as well.
Yeah. So
endurance racing's good fun. I'd much rather sprint racing.
So you didn't really enjoy like the whole. Did you find a difference waking up, like staying up for 24 hours trying to compete in that race, though, or you just not my recollection of it now since
well, the 24, I remember was supposed to have 4 drivers, and one of the fellas, his mum died.
Oh, shit.
So he left. So there was just 3 of us, which was good because I think the maximum amount of seat time you could do, I think, was 13 hours. So I ended up doing over 12 hours because one of the other 2 guys were older guys, and I think it was a bit wet at times, and the other 2 didn't want to be in the wet from memory. So I ended up getting heaps and heaps of seat time. Yeah. And that was in a charade, I think it was.
Mirage. There you go. Yeah. Close.
Yeah, close.
You did obviously the Bathurst 24-hour, but you started your Ute racing. What is it in 2000? Was that your first career?
No, because I actually retired from the league in 2001.
Yep.
And then I first started racing in 2002.
And how did the whole Coors Light thing, or not the Coors, Cooper's Pale Ale, how did that all come about?
So I think in the first year that I was racing, the last race of the year was at Indy, and I managed to win that round in my first year. I was so pumped. And that's when Coopers were just getting involved in racing.
Yep.
And then so the following year, I won a couple more races, and I was still like a bit of a privateer. And then I got to know there's a good mate of mine from Adelaide, Michael Brock. He was good friends with Glenn Cooper from Coopers, who had the sponsorship, and he said, look, we want someone, to win some races. He said, mate, you got to ring Jack. He's winning some races. He's got good crossover from a marketing,
I
suppose, outlook with, that's the same sort of audience. And so he just rang me, said, Jack, you want to come race for us with Coopers? I said, where do I sign? And because a lot of that up to that stage, was self-funded.
Yeah.
You get a few sponsors here and there, but it's never ever enough. So I basically went to a team, gave them my car.
But was it Peters Motorsport, or was it another, or was it just like a separate?
So Peters Motorsport, they ran the car for a while, but I had it. It was through the beginning was McAllister Motors.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Out of Young. Yep. And then I did it myself with a couple of. With Lindsay Dive, he was in the team, and
He was
Eric Stanford, and then we came second. We came runner up like 3 or 4 times, and then I went to John Patchos, at High Tech Motorsport, So he ran it for a year or 2, and I won a championship there, and then there was another fella that looked after it for maybe a year or so after that. But I had I think 7 years, of good sponsorship with Coopers, And great times because...
Do you remember many of the guys? Because back then the Ute Series has changed now massively because they've got the ex-diesel cars to a big V8.
They're back to V8s now, but yeah.
Have you been tempted to go back to that or not really? Or do you want to do something else?
Look, TCM is probably where it's going to be for me. And or if Utes... If the numbers pick up as far as competitors, because I don't... If I'm going to do it, I'd want to do it where it's a fully blown national championship. Like in the Utes, it was good. There was 32 cars.
Yeah, it was so competitive back then when you were racing.
It was competitive. I don't know. I just don't want to go there and run around and around. I want to go there and mix it with the best possible people in that category and make sure it's... Did
you have any rivalries that you remember back then specifically for like a year that you were banging doors with?
I was banging doors with
Kim
James. Grant Johnson was... he was right up there. Marcus Sakanovic, he was, Leighton Cranbrook, Royal Harris.
Royal Harris likes to give it back.
Yeah,
he's a rough racer.
Champion. I was having a beer with him on the Gold Coast last week. Good guy. Great
How
racer.
is he, by the way?
He's a great guy. He's one of those guys that you just can't help but respect and like, but he races really hard, and unless you like racing someone who races really hard, you probably won't like him, you know, because he'll stick it up he'll throw it down the inside any which way.
Yeah.
And he just races to win, and that's why he's so great to watch.
Yeah. Did he speak about his Super 2 debut and stuff like with?
Yeah, I had a bit of a
because
chat.
you said off air that you were, you know, if the money was there, you would have gone to supercars.
Yeah, 100%. Like that was always part of, you know, the
Coopers,
I suppose the path, but you know, GFC hit and that brought a lot of people undone and also knocked a lot of money out of the sponsorship market, and that's probably which kind of like, you know, slowed things up for me.
Yeah, right. So Jack, how'd you get involved in real estate?
Well, I think like, you know, playing football and earning a good chunk of money as a youngster, I suppose, it was just natural to invest in real estate. So I bought my first property at 18, and then from then I just always had a vision about real estate, seeing it perform, and just thought, well, you know, one day I want to get into real estate as a marketing agent.
Yeah.
But then during my career, bought and sold a few more properties, and then I acquired a few properties as part of a development site, and then put a couple of development sites together. So I did a little bit of developing, and then when I retired from football, probably around about 2002 or thereabouts, I thought we'll get into marketing. And
were you doing real estate at the time? You were doing were you focusing on your real estate midweek and then going to footy train? How was that all working out? Because you said
so 2002, so I'd already retired, so that's when I went into real estate. So I wasn't doing any sort of crossover, but I was buying and selling homes and putting development sites together and things like that whilst I was still playing football. But back then we used to train a lot, but there was still always time during the day to.
And how did you co-found your business? Was it Delmarge was the first
So
one?
it was Delmarge. So they were a family friend a long time ago. And basically, that was the first brand, but we rebranded to Domain Residential, and that's the new brand now. So got a few business partners, but it's a good, strong brand on Northern Beaches. And we've been going now for, I don't know, all up 20 years, something like that.
Yeah. I got a bit off topic here. You were talking about off air about crypto. How did you get into the whole crypto business? How did that all start?
Well, you know, it's just one of those things that so many people you've seen and heard, so many people make so much money in crypto. And so, you know, I wouldn't say I'm a big investor at all, but I just, you know, started a course about 6 weeks ago, and I'm just trying to peel through the layers of what it is, how it works. Got a few little things going, and it's been performing great. So
how do you turn it into, like, I don't know anything about crypto. To me, I just think it's like scams online the whole time. How do you actually transform the money from it being like online to cash in the banks that you can buy something? I just don't understand that whole thing.
Well, the coins obviously that have value, you put them into like a wallet, and then that wallet, what you can then do is transfer them into, say, a debit card.
Yep.
And then use the debit card like a credit card, and just go and pay for things.
Yeah, right. So and away you go.
Yeah. It does exist. It does work. Yeah. I mean, you look all around the world. I mean, Russia, they're saying Russia's using crypto. That's how they're surviving at the moment. Yeah. But, you know, it's you know, India are using it. I mean, the ATO here in Australia.
Are they against it or are they for it?
They're for it. I think that's what's going to happen in the future, is that as long as the government gets their pound of flesh out of it, they're happy. Whether people are making money, they just want to make sure they're getting their taxes. Yeah. And about 5 weeks ago in the States, first transaction went through from a Bitcoin through a crypto transaction. Yeah. And the government allowed it, confirmed it. Yeah. They got their stamp duty, want to make sure that they paid their tax along the way. And so, look, I don't think anyone can stop it. It's going to be bigger and bigger. 2% of the world use it at the moment. So it's still in its infancy, but I think, you know, 5 years from now, there's going to be a whole lot more value. So I'd like to think that I'm getting in at the relatively,
the lower levels,
lower level of it, and hopefully grow with it.
Yeah. Back to rugby league for a bit. What do you think about the whole NRL expansion with the Dolphins? Do you reckon that's a good idea or a bad idea, going to 18 teams technically?
I think you've got to have expansion, and that area is such a growth area. I mean, if you don't expand, I just think we're opening ourselves up to, you know, rival codes. Yeah. Taking good kids. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. So back then when you were playing rugby league, did actual other codes try and poach you like Union and AFL? Was that actually around back then, or did it more so happen in the mid-2000s?
Yeah, no, I didn't really have any of that. But when I retired, or before I retired, I went over to Italy I met with a club called Calvisano because I wanted to retire and then play a couple of years over there. And then I just I had a few injuries and that didn't end up happening. But then a couple of years into racing, I then had my manager speak to some Japanese clubs because what I wanted to do was go over and play rugby union in Japan.
Yep.
And
like Craig Wing did.
Yeah, what he did. But some of the clubs over there are owned by Nissan, Mazda, and I wanted to try and do an offset, play football and get a racing experience over there. But at the time, I had a pretty major dirt bike accident, and I missed a few races here in Australia, but I lost all the feeling in my left hand, so you can kind of see all the scars through there. And I had like cuts through my stomach, and
that from the dirt bike accident.
Yeah. So because that hand was like numb for years. Yeah, right. So I didn't get the chance to go to Japan and play
because of your dirt bike accident.
Yeah, dirt bike accident. I'm 48 and still crashing bikes every week.
Do you dirt bike? Do you dirt bike with Dylan Thomas, who I've had on here?
I haven't been riding with Dylan.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dylan's a great rider. He loves his motocross. I'm more enduro riding.
Yeah. So you go for long trail bike rides, really?
Long dirt bike rides. Like Clint, for example, him and I will go for anywhere from sort of like a 60 to sort of 120K dirt bike loop.
Yep.
And it's all sort of trail and enduro.
Do you drive like your cars up to a certain place and go, right?
Well, we go to the Wadigans a fair bit. And I ride up at Cessnock a fair bit up there. Yeah. And then also do some adventure bike riding as well. So got a 700 Yamaha and we just, go out and run. I don't know, sometimes you can run a couple of 1,000 Ks in a week.
Do you have a favoured like bike though, or do you just like randomly like I've never bought a bike or ridden a bike.
Man, I ride Husqvarna.
Husqvarna the ones to go.
Yeah, Husqvarna 450. That's the go.
We'll go back to you, obviously, Ute Series when you were racing. You said that you were struggling to get a supercar ride, but you were saying you would technically go to the TCM or the new Ute Series, but you prefer the TCM series. Is that more now? So if you were to go back to just stitch up a budget once more and, especially now because the whole economy's been hit with COVID, it's even more worse than it was.
Look, if you're going to go race, it's got to make commercial sense. And for it to make commercial sense, it needs to be attractive to sponsors. So it needs to be a national category and it needs to have a big, broad fan, base appeal, So it's out of those two really. TCM is the most, I suppose, it's the second most popular category under supercars.
Yep.
Cars are like, 750 horsepower, like they're big, horsepower. They've got lots of attitude. They look good. And that would be probably my preferred category.
Yeah.
But like I said, if the Utes picked up a whole lot more cars, well then, and it was and look, it is a national series, but with COVID, certain states have been in lockdown. So I think when the world gets back, or even Australia gets back in order, going to every race meet around Australia.
Yeah.
I think that's when sponsors will start throwing more money at it. Yeah. And that's when I'll get back into it.
Did you chat to Ryle about that? Like a potential Ute return or a
Yeah, we had a chat. Yeah, he said, when you come racing again? I said, look, I'm keen to. And I tried to do it a couple of years ago, but it was just Eastern Seaboard. And the sponsor that I was talking to just wasn't interested in an Eastern Seaboard program. They wanted a national.
Yeah. Did you use your because obviously I don't have many athletes who have come from both codes or from both different sports, but did you actually have your rugby league manager helping you out with your car racing career at all, like in any way to help? No. So that was just dropped.
No, well, it's just, George Mimas was my player manager, and he's a great bloke and he'd help me in any way, shape, or form that he possibly could, but that's just not his bag. So the sponsorship proposals, basically they're, you get to meet other different people that are in that field, and I had good people around me to help.
Did Bobby Fulton ever come out and watch your race at the start before he passed away?
No,
he didn't. No, so he just was a racing fan at that.
Bob loved all that stuff, but Bob, Bob lived the best life and the best life, and if he wasn't, doing something with rugby league, he'd be, out one of his properties. He loved being out in the bush, hunting and fishing and things like that. So that was his.
Did you sell many because you were sponsoring Brookvale Oval, sponsoring Manly? Did you actually sell many or give many properties or help them, any of the players with their career? Did you give them any advice?
Yeah, there was some branding there back in the day, but we were kind of more, where we traded mainly was in that sort of Newport to sort of Narrabeen area. But, did sell a few properties for a fair few players like Jamie Lyons and Gordon Tallis, one of his, for him, and Millard and Owen Cunningham and a few bunch of players, from time to time, just depending on where they were, get in there
and have a crack.
Sell it.
How'd you find when Valvoline Raceway, before it obviously has now been abandoned for Eastern Creek, how'd you find the sprint car go with Minicello and all the boys out there at the track when that was all ramped up?
The sprint car experience was probably the best motorsport experience I've ever had.
Yeah.
I remember when I went out there, I took out Randy DePunier, the ex-MotoGP rider.
Yeah.
And another fellow by the name of Chris Watson, who's a, speedway bike rider. And when we went out there, and Minnie was out there and a few others. And cutting laps in a little car with 900 horsepower, and how you sit there and how you accelerate, you push down.
Like a bus.
Yeah, you push down on the accelerator and slide the brake forward, and 900 horsepower, to get 900 horsepower when you're pushing, the throttle an inch, and it comes on all at once and wheels are flopping around, and it's just it feels like you've just been electrocuted.
Really?
How is that crazy? And if you ever get a chance to, be a passenger in one, it is just phenomenal.
It's just insane.
Yep. Definitely something you got to do if you can do it.
I've got actually a guest coming in tomorrow, Luke King. He actually helped you with your Adelaide race. Do you know much about Luke King, or do you just keep separate? And you're quite a private guy, because you were actually quite hard to contact before the podcast.
Was I?
Yeah. Well, you're quite busy.
Right.
So, but yeah, so with Luke, do you know much what he's done? Have you kept in contact with him since you've crewed with him or anything, or you don't really?
No, but Luke was he if it was in Adelaide, and he probably would have been part of a large team, and he would have been one of the mechanics that we just got in to help out. If I saw his face, I'd know for sure. But no, I can't. I can't
recall him.
No.
All good.
Put that down to a concussion.
Yeah.
There we go.
Anyway, Luke's these days he's racing the TCR series. He's actually done really well. He came second to Chaz Mostert last year.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So, but he said online that you influenced his career, surprisingly or not.
Is that
so,
right? You were joking. Wow.
Yeah,
there you go.
So,
he must have been impressionable.
Yeah.
Well, the TCR stuff, I mean, I haven't really seen much of it. I mean, when they first came out, I was pretty, interested to check it out. And mate of mine, Barry Morecambe, he had the Hyundai team. But in all honesty, I don't think I've seen any of the racing from TCR for the last couple of years.
Do you watch any of the supercars these days, or you just kind of just?
I do. I do. When I can, it's there. I will.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of last few years, I just got off Foxtel and got off Netflix and things like that. And just try and watch less TV and
more or less off social media as well.
Well,
if you just kind of hold
social
detox?
media in there, but I just try and get to bed earlier now so I can go training in the morning, because otherwise, I just find myself up all night. And
what's like a day in the life of Jack Elsegood though? What's the schedule for you in the morning? So you said you get up early in the morning. This
was only up until probably about 12, 18 months ago, but yeah, just try and get up now 5:30 and normally at the gym at 6, probably there for an hour and a half, come home, eat, and then I'll head to the office, do some of the crypto work, do some real estate work, and then I'll probably try and get like a 10K walk in at some stage, and then do some more work. Go for a dirt bike ride if I can. Well, I always go for a dirt bike ride during the week at some stage. And then after work, when we go back to the gym, do some cardio, get in the sauna,
and just relax,
eat, go to bed.
Life of a single man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you mentioned Troy Hunt. I raced a little bit against him back in the day. He was in a Mirage, but you obviously know him. How do you know him?
Yeah, well, he was actually my driver coach when I was a kid in my karting career. And Troy and Clint obviously are mates. And then I don't know Clint actually from a bar of soap. It's just because Troy was mates with him.
Yeah.
And Clint was like a legend in the go-karts. And that's how I found out about Clint and Dive. And I had no idea that Clint and that family had actually started North Shore Kart Club before you said that. In the podcast.
Well, the other bloke that you would have known who gave Troy Hunt his start, strangely enough, I haven't seen him for years, but I was driving on the way back from Surface yesterday, and I saw this blue Audi with 5, and that was AILING, so sailing.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it was Gary Holt.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, I pulled the window down. I'm going, Holty. And he's looking at me like, trying to figure out it's Jack. Anyway, he was on the phone trying to buy a sailboat of all things.
Yeah,
of
course he was.
And, but I think he was the fellow who helped Troy
Yeah, he did.
Get in and start racing. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, motorsport, like rugby league, you're a pair of boots and a mouth guard away, and you're on a level playing field. But motorsport, unless you've got
so much
the money
cash
and the expertise and things like that, the right people behind you to really push you through. It's,
how'd you find the Mitsubishi Mirages though when you're racing them compared to the Utes? Did you find that fun though, like the small little box cars? And did you really find it competitive, or you just didn't really think much?
Oh, look, it was a 24-hour car, so we're just you race to finish. But
yeah,
they were pretty awesome. They were doing 242 down Conrod for a little car, but in the 12-hour, I remember the Monaros were racing, and I'd be driving down Conrod, and a Monaro would come down behind you, and he'd just pull out and then just go past you, and as it go past you, he would just blow you out and then just suck you straight back across the track.
Yeah.
Just the wind turbulence would nearly throw you off the track. And being a little light car, it didn't feel great, but, strange for a little car, those bigger, faster cars that were, up and down the straights that eat you, over the top, there wasn't much between the cars.
Do you remember much of you might know my stepdad Jeff Morgan? He was in the Nations Cup. Do you remember much of the GT?
Yeah,
that's my stepdad. Yeah,
right. He was in the Viper.
He was in the Viper, correct?
Yeah.
So I remember heaps of the GTP Nation, like the GTP production car days, and when they had the Utes and all that. Do you remember much of that whole series before it went to the whole?
It was a pro car series. And that's how I got into the Utes, because I went down to a pro car series event at Eastern Creek and looking to go racing. And at that time, I wanted to run a Nissan 200 SX.
Yeah.
And I met Ian McAllister there, and who was the guy that used to own pro car?
Oh, was it? It wasn't Boyden, was it? It was
Grant Boyden.
Oh, no, sorry, it's Ian, one of the Palmers. Ian Palmer. The Palmers.
Ross Palmer.
Ross Palmer. That's
Ross
it.
Palmer.
Yeah.
So I went into the van and they said, "You want to go race?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "What car do you think?" I said, 200 SX. And they said, "Why don't you get into a Ute?" And I said, "Okay, why? Why not?"
Yeah.
And they said, "Well, it's getting heaps of publicity," and that's how I ended up in a Ford.
Yeah,
because there was 16 Holdens and 16 Fords, and basically I bought the number 32, the last franchise, which was a Ford franchise.
Yeah.
So at the time I had a Holden Walkinshaw, which I had just street car, which I love.
Yeah.
Wrap around the streets in. Sold that and bought an AU Falcon Ute, and that was great fun racing.
Yeah, right.
That AU car was a good race car.
How did the franchise thing with the Utes thing, because that was like the wreck things what they have now with supercars, how did that all? I had no idea about that. How did that franchise thing come about? Well,
they just had licenses, and basically you had to have one to be able to compete, and the car had to be, the parity had to be built and signed off and all that sort of stuff by certain builders.
Yep.
And then, so if someone wrote a car off, someone still had a franchise to sell. But at the time, I think the most expensive one that ever sold was like $250,000, and it sold by Raj Sharma back in the day.
Yeah.
And but then you'd have some people that would own a car and then just own a license, and then they'd lease cars, etc. So, look, I think the concept of it all was pretty good, but in the end, just with the getting rid of the V8s and Ford and Holden no longer continuing, that kind of like fell in a bit of a heap.
Yeah, and now it's just
they're worth nothing.
Now it is,
That's right.
And now it's just a random hatchback type, well, not hatchback. Now it's just one of those big the cabby type of Ute series, which is
twin cab.
Yeah, the twin cab Ute. I think these days the reason that they're struggling is because they've just got like no momentum, as you've said before. Like there's not as much publicity as there was back when you were racing, like in the early 2000s to now. Like I think now it's just so monetized that it's hard to adapt a bigger field, don't you think?
Well, I think at the time back then it was relatively cost effective, and when you had big numbers, you had big entries, and then when you had more entries, you could afford better TV package, and it all comes with TV. So now that they've got limited numbers, as soon as I went to the diesel, everyone knew it was going to fail except for the people that said, no, we're going diesel racing. And it's just lost momentum, and now just trying to get the people back into it. I think another year, end of this year, hopefully next year, and depending on what goes on with the economy, I think it'll be a much better scene. And then if they can get 26 cars in the field, then they'll get a decent TV package. Hopefully they can do it, because everyone loves watching Ute racing.
Yeah. Do you remember in the Nations Cup days and the GDP days when they went down to Tasmania and they had the GT cars racing side by side for like a pole shootout, like sprint cars? Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Well, you weren't there. You weren't there for that. No.
Could have been. Don't remember it.
Blame it down to another concussion.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So you were looking towards the Nations Cup, was that right, or were you looking at the time?
Look, I did. I remember speaking to because I was always trying to get out of Utes and get into something faster. I remember speaking to Greg Crick, who had that was
Jeff's, Jeff's old car,
Vipers, because I don't know. I just loved the Dodge Viper for whatever reason, and we just had so much mumbo on a straight line, and I suppose it was just one of those cars, and they're pretty reliable, and those engines went forever. And then you look at like Porsches and things like that, and they just at the time something go wrong on those. I know they went a reliable car too, but something. You
actually had to go on a Porsche, didn't you?
Yeah, I raced over in Spa in a Le Mans race, which was an awesome experience.
Yeah.
Raced with a fellow by the name of Xavier Pompidou, who was a world champion Porsche Cup champion back in the day, and another fellow that owned the car who was an oil trader in the UK. But Alan Simonson, unfortunately, Al's no longer with us. He passed away at Le Mans, I think it was. But yeah, it was his seat, and he picked up a better seat and a better car. And at the time, he was in the Coopers team with me, and one week I'd get pole, he'd get the other pole. It was kind of like, well, a little bit tit for tat. And he said to the fella, look, give this guy a go. So he's the one that got me the steer in it. So flew over to Frankfurt.
Yeah,
hired a brand new 350 Mercedes. Had the thing tapped out at 255k, and I think 235 wouldn't go any faster. That's right. 235, and made our way to Spa, had a race, and came home. But that was an epic experience.
Did you meet any interesting people over there? Because a lot of people who I've had on the show, when they go to Europe, they meet interesting. Did you meet any girls or anything over there?
Oh, you meet girls everywhere, man. When half the people you meet are women, aren't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was. I think what was really unusual is everyone that you met over there. Everyone wanted to know had I raced, not Bathurst, but Phillip Island. Everyone was like, "Have you been to Phillip Island? Have you been?" Yeah, raced there a bunch of times. You know, they go, "Wow, like what's it like?"
Yeah.
And to this day, I still think Phillip Island's the best racetrack in Australia.
Really, you reckon Phillip Island's the best racetrack in Australia?
Yeah, by far,
hands down.
Yeah.
Why is that? It's just because it's smooth and just like the marble racetrack.
It's just like Bathurst is awesome, but like Conrod, you get a big rest and. And then, pitch straight, big rest, mountain straight, big rest. It's only when you're going up over the top where you're busy. Whereas Phillip Island, it's
pack racing in a way.
You're on it everywhere. You get a little rest. Like even coming on the straights, it's just full on. And I was lucky enough to run a mate of mine's got a couple of not MotoGP bikes. What are they?
Yeah.
What are the
super bikes?
Super bikes. So he's got a couple of BMW super bikes. So I did a 3-day ride down there a few months back on a BMW 1000, and to ride that at Phillip Island was just insane as well. But you just don't get anywhere to have a rest.
Yeah.
And every corner's high speed.
Yeah.
Whatever you're riding's got a bit of attitude as a consequence to the speed you're doing. It's just the best place to be.
You just enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's to be honest as well. That's actually my favorite racetrack in Australia.
Yeah.
Because I race in the historic Formula Ford series and the Kent series, and every time I've raced in the historic racing at the start of the year, it warms you up for the rest of the year.
Yeah, right.
And the pack racing there is insane. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
And there's heaps of passing opportunities too there.
Yeah.
So
and it always creates a bit of a life in town when you finish.
Yeah,
the
go to
race
Cows. Yeah, absolutely. There's always plenty of people about. Yeah, good restaurants. It's just a great place.
So Jack, before we end the podcast, what is for you? What do you prefer? Do you prefer your rugby league career or your racing career? What did you get the most adrenaline rush out of? Like being in a grand final or racing at Bathurst?
Well, I suppose, look, they're both very different, but when I was playing rugby league, I was getting paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I was going through, getting bashed and going through a lot of pain. But when you're racing cars, it costs you a lot of money, but you're not going through any pain.
Yeah.
But the highs you feel, so for example, in rugby league, scoring a try and there's 40,000 fans going berserk, that's
cool.
Gives you a mega charge, as does, you get whacked or you get hit and you just hear the, roar of the crowd go, oh, that hurt, like that sort of stuff there. It just fills you full of adrenaline.
Yeah.
But my first ever race win at Indy, I remember going over over the line and just screaming, like, you know, yelling my head off, like pumping the roof and going berserk and things like that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, that I would prefer because the highs in racing, when you do get them, they're more sustainable.
Yeah.
You know, they go for longer, you know, but in rugby league, you know, you're not scoring tries all the time. Most of the time you got your ass hanging out and your tongue hanging out and you're in pain.
Yeah, yeah.
Because for someone building you, but occasionally you get a great feeling. So if I had a choice to be a pro footballer or pro racing car driver all day.
All day? You'd take that any day of the week.
Yeah.
Would there be any particular supercar team that you would have gone with, say, if you had to rewind the clock for a bit of nostalgia?
Look, you know what, Triple Eight, you always want the best car, don't you? So you'd say Triple Eight all day, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Did you talk to actually any of those supercar owners when you won the Ute Championship twice?
Yeah, like I had a couple of steers in supercar. Like spoke to Morris a couple of times and spoke to the Stone brothers a few times. They were good guys. Used to always have, because you know you'd be pitting garages and things like that. Spoke to Larry Perkins a couple of times. You're always sniffing around trying to get a drive, but you know, for them it costs a shitload of money as well. And so you know they want someone to bring a big budget. Like there's no such thing as a free drive in supercars. So.
I think back then you were allowed to have like maybe one or two offs, so to speak, and then you'd have to hand it to another driver. I think back then that was the case. So was that more so the case with you if you were to do like a main game drive or anything like that, or not?
I don't remember that. I remember really pushing Jim Morton, who's since passed, he's karting, Jim for a steer in one of the endurance races.
Yeah.
But really the only real big endurance race I got was the one at Le Mans.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, the one at Spa in the Le Mans race.
Yeah,
so
in the Porsche.
It was a 1,000K race, similar to Bathurst.
Yeah.
And got through that unscathed. So and it was you know, with LMP 1 and 2 cars in the field too, like that was pretty crazy because they go past you pretty quick too.
And you're just holding on for dear life, hoping you finish the race really well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So racing cars all day.
Well, that pretty much sums up the podcast, Jack. I appreciate you for coming on, and hopefully I'll see you around soon. Maybe at a racetrack.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to On the Couch with Hooley. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to leave us a rating on Apple or Spotify.